Let's talk about why Mormonism has such a pervasive impact on mental health.
So this therapist has triggered some things, other things I'd like to talk about that we as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can do better and must do better on. Before I jump into that, I'll show you some interesting information. According to the Pew Research Center, the Latter-day Saints consistently rank among the happiest and most satisfied religious groups in the United States. 87% of LDS responders in the Pew survey said they were very satisfied with their lives, the highest among major religious groups. They were also more likely to say religion is very important in their lives, which correlates strongly with life satisfaction across faith groups. Harvard Human Flourishing Program in 2020s, studies led by blah, 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 goes on, shows that active Latter-day Saints associated with greater well-being, lower rates of depression, higher levels of meaning and purpose, better social connection, and civic engagement. The Enstrom and Breslow study, 1981-2008, shows that there's a significantly lower rates of cancer, heart disease, and mortality. Early mortality, I should say. Longer life expectancy, up to 9 to 11 years longer than the U.S. average. These benefits were especially pronounced among LDS individuals who followed the health code known as the Word of Wisdom, with no tobacco, no alcohol, no coffee, and healthy diet. Blue zones, LDS communities probably in Utah have been highlighted in health studies of blue zone-like population areas of unusually long life. Factors contributing to longevity include strong social networks, healthy lifestyles, sense of purpose, all emphasized in LDS teachings. So, protective effects against risk populations, BYU and national longitudinal studies, LDS youth and adults who are active in their faith are less likely to engage in premarital sex, substance abuse, smoking, and drinking. Religious communities provide protective factors through community expectations and internalized values and strong family structures. Now, a strong caveat here is that these strongest outcomes are among those who are actively engaged in their religion. So someone who just says, yeah, I'm a Mormon, but doesn't actually live it, they don't get the same benefits. And Grok here showed the same thing as ChatGPT. LDS members who actively live their religion report higher happiness, better mental health, and improved physical health compared to other religious groups and the general population. Key factors include adherence to the Word of Wisdom, strong community ties, doctrinal emphasis on family and service. Studies like the UCLA mortality study and Pew Happiness surveys, along with ex post citing recent data, show LDS members outperforming others in metrics like happiness, very happy for LDS women versus 20% for unaffiliated. A lot of people say, Mormon women are so unhappy, but this actual data, not just like hearsay, shows that they're significantly more happy than other women in the general population. So sometimes it can seem that this is not the case. You're like, no, I know this isn't the case because I have all of these case studies that I've been exposed to, all of my clients who come in and they're LDS and they're not happy, or they've been abused, or their parents are terrible, or teaching these awful things, or they're really anxious or really depressed and things like this. And this is why case studies are not actually representative of general populations. You have to have large scale data collection. In my particular practice, I work in areas that are not predominantly LDS, Ohio, and also in Missouri. And I find there, basically none of my patients that I work with are members of the Church of Jesus Christ. Most of them are atheist or Protestant, and pretty much all of them, and I say all, the vast majority of them statistically are victims of abuse or involved with a drug addiction or all these other really awful, horrible problems, have terrible depression, have terrible anxiety. And so what I could do if I was subjecting myself to sampling bias is to say, wow, not being a member of the church really, makes things awful for you. You must be, most all people that are not members of the church must live this way and have this terrible life. And that's not accurate. It's not, most people are not like that. Large population studies, though, show that people who are actively living as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are happier, they live longer. So what can we do better? Because we can do better. We need to do better. As a therapist, there are some things that kind of flash out to me as red flags. And these are things that I think we've inherited as members of the church from our Victorian era ancestors, purity culture, the Puritans, all these people that, kind of passed down the religious ideas to us, and we've adopted a lot of their ideas and approaches to things. The first one that I would really, really like to try to persuade members to get away from is forcing your children to live your religion by manipulating them with anger, fear, or guilt. If you read in the book of Enos, it says that Enos wasn't living his religion, but he had often heard his father talking about spiritual things and about the joy of the saints. And that is what motivated him to come to God in prayer. Let's not anger or guilt or fear anybody into following Jesus Christ. Let's joy them into it. Let's set an example for your children. You can explain to them why you do what you do, but don't misrepresent other groups. Don't make it look like everybody else in the world out there is bad. We're the only good people, because that's not accurate. Everybody else is totally miserable except for us. That's not accurate. We're only like 15% happier, not 50% happier. Live our religion. Invite your children to do it. If they reject the invitation, just keep setting a good example and offer encouragement. But if they say they don't want the encouragement, then don't push it on them. You can ask them if they want encouragement. Believe it or not, your children are not going to run away from the church because of your good example and not forcing them on it. They are likely to run away from the church at some point in their lives if you guilt, fear, and anger religion upon them. What's going to happen is they're living their religion, and their mind is going to be motivated by these awful reasons. And at some point in their life, they're going to get terrible anxiety and fear, and they're going to go into a therapist, and also guilt. I didn't mention that one. Guilt, anger, fear. They're going to go to a therapist, and the therapist is going to say, wow, every time that I talk about the eldest religion, you start getting triggered as if you're feeling anger or guilt or fear. And there's going to be this connection in your mind between your religion and anger, fear, and guilt. Why? Because that's the way that their parents pushed religion on them. Don't do that. Jesus Christ's message is primarily about love. You should try using love. And that way, if they ever go to a therapist for some other reason, the therapist won't discover that guilt, fear, and anger are associated with the religion. Instead, it will be love. And they probably won't even need to go to a therapist if that's the case, at least not for their religion. Please don't traumatize your kids. Forcing your children to follow the religion the exact same way that you do when they're not at that point yet in their lives is not going to make them more likely to stay in the church later on in life. It's more likely to get them to not want to. Let your children decide and let them do things when they're ready for it if they want to. It was Satan's plan to force people to take away their agency. Your children are not more righteous for being feared or guilted or angered into living their religion. That's not righteous. They're not going to get more blessings for that. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. You make sure that we're doing things for the right reasons. And sometimes we want to get our children to do the right thing so that we look good. That's also bad. Let your children decide. Now, personally, I've been taking this approach, especially since doing therapy with people and understanding what can happen if you do things bad. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm doing better. I don't force my children to live their religion. I let them decide how they're going to keep the Sabbath day holy. I teach them what I do and why, and I say, now it's your decision. You guys get to do what you want. And guess what? Most of the time, they make the right decisions. Most of my kids read their scriptures every single night, write in their journals, and say their prayers. Because I don't force them to do it. I do it myself, and I explain why I do it. And I ask do you want some encouragement to do things the way that I do it? I even make it very clear that most people don't do this. This is not normal. Most people in the world don't do this, and they're still good people. They don't have to do this. There's no, God's not going to hate them or get angry at them or something if they don't do this. I just do it because I found it makes me happy in my life. And most of my kids, that's enough. They want to do it. But they're doing it of their own choice, not being forced. A couple of the things that I just need to bring up. You got to be careful. Some of the songs, I feel like, even songs that I love, like I'm a Child of God. I'm a child of God, and He has sent me here, has given me an earthly home with parents kind and dear. Some kids don't have parents kind and dear. Some parents are abusive. Some of the wording in some of these songs, I know what the songwriters are going for. I know what the idea, the intention was all in the right place. But it's hard for kids that don't have that. Some people's parents are abusing them, and they're singing these songs, and it's hard. So try to understand some of these things. There's some things we could do better. Just open our eyes a little bit. I know that the intention's in the right place, and we're not trying to do anything bad. Another one that this particular therapist mentions that I think is really worth talking about is the idea of purity. If someone else abuses you, that does not make you defiled. The person that abused you is defiled. You did nothing wrong. And this sort of wording is even perpetuated by some of the authors in the Book of Mormon. You got to be careful with this kind of wording because this is stuff that people take internally and it really messes them up. So Hope this message is helpful, and thank you for listening.